Here is a hard truth about pilots. The most dangerous one is not the pilot that fails. It is the pilot that succeeds beautifully under conditions that will never exist again at scale. A dedicated nurse, a fully stocked shelf, a donor covering every cost. It works. The report glows. And then you try to take it to 1,000 ordinary facilities and it quietly falls apart because it was never relevant to the problem those facilities actually have or feasible with the staff and budget they actually run on. That gap is what Recommendation 2 is built to close. Recommendation 2 of BWEIM, the ExpandNet and WHO set of 12 recommendations for designing interventions that scale, says this: ensure the relevance and feasibility of the proposed innovation from the very start. 2 words, 2 tests. Relevance asks, is this intervention actually solving a priority problem that the system and the community genuinely feel, not a problem that matters mainly to the donor? Feasibility asks, can the routine system that will eventually deliver this at scale actually absorb it with its real staff, its real budget, and its real logistics? An intervention can be brilliant and still fail both tests. If it does, no amount of evidence that it works will carry it to scale. Let's take relevance first. Relevance is not whether your intervention is a good idea in general. It is whether it answers a problem that the people who must own it at scale already feel as urgent. 2 things have to line up. First, a genuine felt need on the ground, a gap that providers and communities experience every day. Second, alignment with what government has already prioritized in its policies, its plans, its stated commitments. When those 2 align, you are pushing on an open door. When they don't, you're asking an overstretched system to carry a problem it did not ask you to solve. And it won't. Not past the life of your project. The taste is simple and uncomfortable. If your intervention disappeared tomorrow, would anyone in the system actually miss it? This is where a lot of well-meaning programs go wrong. They import a priority, a model that works somewhere else, or a theme the funder is championing this year, and graft it onto a system that is wrestling with something else entirely. The intervention is real, and the evidence is real, but it is answering the wrong question for this place. Relevance is local. It cannot be assumed from a successful pilot in another country or even another state. Now, feasibility. This is where most promising pilots quietly die. Feasibility is not whether the intervention can be delivered. It is whether it can be delivered by the system that will own it under the conditions that system actually operates in. Not your hand-picked pilot facility. The crowded, understaffed, intermittently funded facility where most people actually seek care. Ask the honest questions. Can it run on the cadre of worker who is actually there, not a specialist you flew in? Can it survive a stockout, a delayed budget, a transfer of the one trained champion? Is it simple enough to deliver reliably without project support? Complexity is the enemy of feasibility. Every extra component is one more thing that breaks when the project funding ends. And watch for the hidden props. A pilot often succeeds because it is quietly carried by things that vanish when the project closes. A dedicated project officer, a separate supply line, top-up payments, an external supervisor. None of that exists in the routine system. If your intervention only works with those props in place, you have not tested feasibility, you have tested the project. The real question is whether it still stands once the scaffolding comes down. Here is the part people skip. Relevance and feasibility are not things you declare in a proposal. They are things you test deliberately under real conditions before you commit to scale. On paper, almost everything looks relevant and feasible. The proposal always says the system can absorb it. The way you find out whether that is true is operational research. You try the intervention in real settings with real system staff, and you measure whether it holds. That evidence is what converts a hopeful assumption into a design you can stand behind. And sometimes, the most valuable finding is that it is not feasible as designed, which saves you from scaling a failure. Let me show you what this looks like with real work on a maternal health project and the Pathfinder's Evidence to Action program. The challenge was family planning access in a setting with very high unmet need. Around a third of women who wanted to prevent pregnancy could not get a method. The bottleneck was feasibility. Long-acting contraceptive implants could only be inserted by nurses, and in most primary health centers, there simply weren't enough of them. Community health extension workers, the cadre actually present in those facilities, were not permitted to provide them. So when a nurse was unavailable, women were turned away. For the workers in those facilities, it was a daily frustration. A woman would walk in ready to choose a long-acting method. The one provider who could give it was not there, and she was referred elsewhere or simply sent home, and often she did not come back. Every one of those was a missed opportunity, and the people closest to the problem felt it most. The relevance was obvious. The feasibility was not. So we did not assume. We ran operational research. Could these community health workers be trained to provide implants safely under routine conditions? The evidence said yes, convincingly. And for the workers themselves, the change was profound. One of them, Nine Yellow Duke, a community health extension worker who had served her facility for years, described what it was like before. Each time women came to my health facility, she said, I had to refer them to a trained nurse, and there were a lot of missed opportunities, especially when the nurse was not available. After she was trained and certified, her account changed completely. I can now remove and insert implants for women in my community. After almost 3 years of providing these services, I can say that I am an expert, and I feel so happy. That finding and that change in a real provider is what justified a policy change and then a statewide scale up. And when it scaled, the numbers followed. Over an 8-month stretch, long-acting method uptake rose by around 85%, and postpartum acceptors by 77%. Relevance gave it a reason to exist. Feasibility, proven under real conditions, gave it the right to scale. We see the same pattern in our current work. In our April 2026 scaling orientation, 8 government entities assessed their own live programs against the scalability criteria. Relevance scored strongly almost across the board. These are real problems, well aligned with government priorities. But feasibility was a different story. The questions of ease and compatibility. Can it be delivered simply? Does it fit existing systems and workflows? Were the most variable in the entire cohort. And testability, whether the intervention had been tried under the variety of real conditions where it must scale, was the single most under-addressed criterion. In plain terms, plenty of relevant interventions, far fewer that had honestly tested whether the routine system could carry them. That gap is where pilots go to die. Now the objection I hear, everything in my proposal is feasible. It says so right there. And that is exactly the trap. Feasibility asserted in a document is worth nothing. Feasibility is a finding, not a claim. The discipline of recommendation 2 is to treat the system can absorb this as a hypothesis to be tested, not a sentence to be written. It asks you to design your pilot not to prove that the intervention works in ideal conditions, and we mostly know it does, but to prove it works in the conditions that will actually exist at scale. Get comfortable with the possibility that the honest answer is not yet. That answer found early is worth more than a glowing evaluation found too late. So recommendation 2 is a gate. Before you invest in scaling anything, you put it through 2 honest tests. Is it solving a problem this system genuinely feels? And can this system actually deliver it as it really operates? Relevance earns it a reason to exist. Feasibility, tested not asserted, earns it the right to scale. In the next episode, we move to recommendation 3, reaching consensus upfront on what scale-up will actually require, so that everyone is building toward the same end. If this was useful, subscribe for the series. And tell me in the comments, have you ever watched a genuinely good intervention fail simply because the routine system could never have carried it?